Hi, glad you could join us. We're going to have a great conversation today about one of Indiana's hidden jewels, the Lumina Foundation. We're also going to hear some great music. I'm going to tell a story or two, so I'm going to go freshen up my iced tea. Why don't you join us here on the porch? Neighbor Tom, thanks for coming over today.
No problem. Glad to stop by.
Well, I always like to visit with neighbors. You know, last night you joined me for supper, and we stopped by and saw my neighbor Tanya, and she sent us a blackberry pie. That was a good visit. It was. That was a good visit.
You know, there's only two kinds of pie that I like.
I know what it is, but tell me.
Hot pie and cold pie.
Hot and cold pie. I'm with you on that. Well, I got a story for you, and this isn't a story that involves me, so this is kind of a story that just goes around, because us farm people like to laugh about how city people are so far removed and don't really know what's what and what's going on. You know, like thinking brown cows give chocolate milk. But this involves a city lady. She comes down to visit this guy that's a farmer. She's always wanted to see a farm. And she just calls this guy, and this guy says, "Sure, I'd love to show you around." So she comes down, and he greets her, and he's got on his bib overalls. He's kind of playing the part a little bit. And he takes her out, and they start walking around the farm. And he's pointing out the boundaries, and he's pointing over there. He says, "Now that tall crop there with that yellow top," he said, "that's corn." And he said, "That corn's grown, will be ground up into feed for pigs. And that plant over there that's about 3 foot tall, those are soybeans. And those soybeans go in a lot of things, even go in plastic, but they go in feed." Then showing him something that looked again that he called Milo, which has a head on it, looks like a flowering plant, but also goes in feed. Some people call it sorghum. It's a different type of sorghum than what you eat. And then he was just pointing out his hogs, and he was pointing out his cattle. And she all of a sudden looked over there. She was studying them animals. She pointed at the one when he had talked to her about the cows and says, "Tell me, why does that cow not have any horns?" And he says, "Well, let me tell you." He says, "Let me tell you, lady." He said, "There's different kinds of cows." He said, "There's the ones that have got the big horns, the long horns, and some have shorter horns, but that's the way they're genetically made. Then you've got other cows that don't have any horns. They're polled, P-O-L-L-E-D, and they're bred, and that's the way most cows are, so they don't have any horns. But every now and then you get some cows that are born with a little nubbins like this, and they'll have a couple of these little horns on their head, and they'll either, and this doesn't hurt the animals, I don't want the PETA folks getting upset, but they grind them down, or they put just a little drop of acid on it, the horns go away." And she said, "Oh," and he said, "But lady, the reason why that cow doesn't have any horns is because it's a horse." Well, it's a treat to have you down here with us today, Jamie. The Jamie Marasotas from the Lumina Foundation. I'm glad you came to Sanborn today.
Well, thanks very much for the invitation. I appreciate it, John.
Well, I'll tell you, I know it, but for some of our guests that are listening, tell us what the Lumina Foundation is.
So, Lumina Foundation is trying to get a lot more people into and through learning after high school. It doesn't matter whether it's workforce training, a college, a university, anything that'll help you build your skills and talent so that you can do better in life individually, get a good job, but also lead a good life, be able to sort of benefit from what happens when you learn, when you study, when you see the world from a different perspective, and you build some skills along the way to help you be more successful. So our job at Lumina Foundation is to help create a much larger number of people who can actually get through that learning system. People like me, the first in their family to go to college, the first generation learners, so that we can both build success in our families, but also contribute to what society needs.
Sure. Well, I'm glad you mentioned, because I'm also a first generation person, but as we know, we don't mean somebody has to go get a 4-year degree. Like you said, it can be a certification, 2-year degree. It can just be taking some classes, anything to improve those skills, is what you're telling me.
That's exactly right. And in fact, I think that there's lots of different ways in which you can learn. You can get a certificate, a certification. There's things now they call badges. Lots of things in which you can learn. A third party says, that's good, you've learned something. They're going to give you that credential. And employers respect those credentials, and therefore you can be more successful in work and in life. But it doesn't have to be a bachelor's degree. It doesn't even have to be an associate's degree. It could be, as long as it's a good quality program that's going to help you be more successful than what you were doing before you started that program, we think that's a good thing.
Well, I know you've written a couple of books, and I've read them both, and I read your first one, and it just knocked my socks off, on America and talent. It was called Talent. As I told you, I was getting ready to say America's Got Talent, and then I was going to say, oh, it's not that. But it was interesting, because when I'm reading it, I had traveled around the state, never had one business person, regardless of how anti-government they were, say anything about taxes. It was always, we need trained or trainable workforce.
That's right. I mean, look, talent is what powers our economy and strengthens our democracy. So people who actually have talent, and talent in its simplest form is either something that you've gained because you have experience, or it's something you've gained because you've gotten educated, because you've learned. But talent helps you improve your own situation, your own well-being. And I believe talent helps our economy get stronger, because individuals with talent together, the sum is greater than the parts. So, I say America needs talent, not America's got talent. America needs talent. And America needs talent because we need more talent as our economy grows more complex, as technology changes more and more the way in which we do work. We've got to build our talent base, and we've got to do a better job of learning from each other. As Americans, we've got to find a better way to sort of get past these divides, get past these, we spend a lot of time, particularly in the last few years, talking about how we're divided as a country. I want to spend time finding ways in which we can come together, where we can find that common ground.
I want to come back to that whole part about how this relates to democracy. But I want to jump back about something I read about you recently. And you were talking about some of the jobs for the future. You wanted people to look at careers that were sustainable. Explain that to me. That caught me off guard, the use of that term there.
A sustainable career is something that allows you to do the work that you're doing now, but that's going to lead to the next opportunity. Because one of the things that we know about technology is technology has always changed the nature of work. If you go back to the 1800s in America, when technology started to be used on farms, in our agricultural society, et cetera, and as things progress, technology continues to change what people do and how they do it. The key is to find ways in which you can create sustainable opportunities for yourself, so that what you are learning, it's essentially like a layer cake, right? That what you learn now and what you're doing in this job can help you do the next job and the next job and the next job. And as technology...
So that way you don't just get in that dead-end job.
Exactly.
You're training yourself so you can personally
Exactly. And so that's why, my view is that we are lifelong learners, that we are people who have to continue to learn to build our own skill set over the course of our lives. I'm not saying you got to go to college for the rest of your life. I'm saying that you got to continue to learn, and that learning is something that people should recognize when you seek that next opportunity. It used to be, guys in our age range, they could go and they could work in one company and they could have a good career for 40 years in one company. And that's very rare now. You need to have sustainable skills that allow you to do the job you're doing now, but you can build on that to get your next job and your next job and your next job.
Well, that key to a good job, to be able to take care of your family, yourself, it's kind of like the 4 freedoms of the Norman Rockwell painting, but you've tied that to democracy. And I want you to sit tight, because we're going to come back and I want to talk about how these sustainable careers and democracy and that civility, I want to have that discussion with you on how all of that affects our economy. So stay with us here on The Porch. Jamie, I've told many people, you're the smartest guy I know. But I'll tell you, when I was doing some studying, knowing you were going to drop by, you talking about things we have to do to preserve democracy. And the idea that the Illumina Foundation is concerned about that touched my heart, because I'm worried.
I'm worried too. By the way, I think you need smarter friends if I'm the smartest guy that you know. But you know,
Broaden my circle.
Let me say, all of us as Americans should be concerned about the fact that our freedoms are being constrained, and they're being constrained for reasons that I think we understand, right? Which is that society's changing, and with those changes, a lot of people feel like they're not part of the change that's taking place, and that's a legitimate thing that we need to talk about. We need to keep talking to each other. And part of that has to do with the fact that we need to make sure that we create greater opportunities for everyone to participate in the economy. A lot of Americans think the economy's rigged, and they think it's rigged against them. Yeah. And I think the learning system, whether it's a college or university or a workforce training program or what have you, can help you build skills to be a better participant in our democracy. What I mean by that is if you are able to build your skill set and you can contribute and earn a sustainable wage and allow you to contribute in your community, you're a better participant in our democracy. And in turn, our society benefits from all those contributions that you're making. The other thing that I think we need to think about when it comes to democracy, to freedom, is that people are out there who are trying to tell us that somebody else is causing the problems that they're facing. Yeah. That's not a good thing for us as a society. And one of the things that you learn when you learn with other people is what other people are really like. You benefit from that experience, that connection, that human connection with each other. And to me, when you learn and you learn with other people, you appreciate the differences that you have, but you find common ground. Common ground is what really should matter to us as Americans.
You know, when you said so many things there when you're talking about how so many people think the economy's rigged against them. Every ethnic group, every racial group, whether they're in the majority, minority, any type of group you want to lump out there thinks that they are the ones getting picked on. And I'm not saying they are or they aren't, but they are all feeling that way. Exactly. And this is the first time they don't feel that. It's almost you remember the old comic strip Pogo. It's like we have met the enemy and it is us. And I think there's some truth to that. This whole lack of civility. You know, I had someone, I teach a class at IU Bloomington, and we were talking about Governor Eric Holcomb. And of course, one of the students said, well, that's who you ran against. And, and I was giving him a compliment. And I said, look, Governor Eric Holcomb is not my enemy. He was my political opponent. My differences with Eric Holcomb are political, not personal. I consider him a friend. I enjoy talking with him. But there are people that if I told that to today, Democrats would be mad that I spoke kindly, and there'd be Republicans mad that I had complimented him.
This is what's wrong with the system today, John, right? So, I've always said that one of the great strengths of democracy, I've been in a lot of other countries. I've been in countries where democracy is not there, where rule of law does not exist. And I've always said the thing about America is difference is what makes us great. What's made us great in America is that we've talked about our differences, and at the end of the day, we've overcome those differences to achieve better results for all of us. That's what's made us great. So if we don't do that, if we stay in our own camps and we don't find that common ground, that comes at the risk of our democracy. It comes at the peril of our shared well-being. So, I always say that, look, I'm going to talk to people who I disagree with a lot on a lot of issues because I still want to find out where we have that common ground. And again, education is key to that. Education gives you the tools to be able to talk to people in a reasonable way about things that you can agree on. Like most Americans, for example, believe that fairness is something that we should all strive for in society. We want society to be fair. We want government to be fair to us. Well, how do we do that? Let's talk about that. Let's not talk about how this program or that program didn't give me what I need or didn't give them what they needed. Let's talk about how our shared well-being can be created as a result of what we do together.
Well, it's interesting. I love history, love reading Winston Churchill. And there was a time after the Second World War that everybody thought democracy was on the rise. And even though you had Stalin, you had Mao, they thought they were on the rise. But you look today, and I know a lot of Americans are concerned about our republic/democracy. But I mean, it's worldwide. I mean, look at Turkey, look at Hungary. I mean, this is happening everywhere.
Yeah, there's a survey that's delivered around the world called the World Values Survey. And the World Values Survey says that today, 70% of people in the world are living in non-democratic, in other words, authoritarian contexts. That's an increase from less than 50% just 20 years ago.
Really?
So we need to think about what that means and why that allure of anti-democratic behavior is so powerful to people. It's because people are not being allowed to participate in this economy. They are not sharing in the benefits. Only some people benefit from it. And to go back to my point, I think if people believe the system is rigged, they're willing to listen to people who are going to tell them it's rigged, because what they want is they want power.
Absolutely.
And we've got to make sure that we resist those people and come together and solve our problems together.
Well, that coming together, and everybody knows my political affiliation, but I'm excited at some point to think that we'll get a political leader who'll bring us together. Jamie, I don't want you to leave, because we're going to have some great musical guests here, so stay with us on the porch. Got another friend stop by today, Maya Michelson with the Indiana Arts Commission. You've got somebody special here for us today.
I do indeed, and it is my pleasure to introduce you today to Helen Kiesel. Helen's from Hauptstadt down in Gibson County, and she is an amazing accordion player. Helen, would you play one for us?
Helen, that was marvelous. Thank you so much for joining us on the porch. Now, it's Helen Kiesel.
Right.
What was your maiden name?
Kissel.
So you were a Kissel, and then you got married and you became a Kiesel.
That's right.
Woo! Boy, there's a couple of good German names for you. That's
Yeah.
wonderful. Now, tell me something. Do you have children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren?
I got 5 children, 17 grandchildren, 5 great-great-grandchildren, and 1 on the way.
5 great-great-grandchildren.
Yes.
My lands. That's quite an accomplishment. I got to ask you this. I'm not very good, and Maya also plays. We both have an accordion. How many do you have?
I tell you, I quit counting when I got to about 14 or 15, something like that. They're all over in the different rooms.
Well, you'd want to put them in different rooms so
Yeah.
you could play them in different places. Is there a favorite? Do you have a favorite?
Well, I like this one, and I like my newest one, what I got. It's an electric accordion. So I guess that's my two favorites.
Wow.
And then I like the one Mom and Dad bought for me when I was in high school. They
bet.
bought me a accordion, and it was new, and I thought I was in heaven when they brought that new accordion for me.
I'm sure you did. Professor, I hear that we're really hearing something other than just accordion music here. Something's got a spatial tie to our Hoosier State.
Yeah, definitely. Helen continues a tradition of playing music that's basically embedded in southwestern Indiana. If you would go to the taverns and stuff, the families would go there and they would be playing this music, not just to play music, but there would be dances, and you would go to weddings and everybody knew how to dance to this type of music. And it's an interesting mix of not just straight German polkas and German music, but you also get the old-time fiddle tunes that are kind of blended together. And so that's why you're playing your father's favorite tune, Red Wing, right? And then you're going to play for us another tune that's a more German tune, right?
Right, Bear Barrel Polka.
Bear Barrel Polka.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. So it really is a distinctive tradition from this region of our state.
Well, thank you. That's good to know. Well, I'll tell you, ladies and gentlemen, we sure appreciate you spending time with us here on the porch. And, you know, I'd like to remind you that if you see somebody this week that looks like they're really having a tough time, give them a smile, a big smile, because it may be the only one they get. You know what? Let's hear it. Take it away.
got a story, I'd like to hear it. Morning glories, boats on the river. Sit a spell, sing a tune to yourself, and I'll join you on the porch, on the porch. Means everything to come home, spinning with a vein.